You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in beautiful Northport, Florida. I understand it's hot outside today, and I hope everybody takes their time getting home. It's going to be a great weekend. Remember to take your time on the freeway. Let's not spend our time in the hospital, getting repaired and spending our time in the trauma room. Let's get home safe, and let's make sure everybody else gets a chance to get home safe too. I've got two extremely good friends and associates, I guess, of the city in with me today. Chief Todd Garrison and Deputy Chief Chris Morales. How you guys doing?
Great, John. Thanks for having us on.
Yes, thank
you. We were having a brief discussion, Chief, about the inner workings of the police department itself. And can you kind of give an overview real quick of all the facets of what happens within the building?
So, a lot of people just see the uniform car out there, and that is your front line, your backbone of any law enforcement agency is the uniformed police officer. But they don't realize that behind that is a whole support mechanism. You have a whole slew of detectives that are supporting that operation. You have crime scene forensic personnel. You have property and evidence personnel. You have records personnel that are keeping track of all the documentation and the reports and all that stuff that's coming through. They also are responsible for handling all the public records requests. They're also handling everything going to the state attorney's office. They're making sure that everything's sent to private attorneys on cases. So you have that whole component. You have your dispatch center that's here. That's 24/7. You have staff here supporting that. So there's a lot of facets. In addition to that is our administrative staff that's supporting all those units as well. So there's a lot of working people inside a police station outside of that uniform patrol car that you see driving around on the streets.
And so I'm going to slide up to Chris real quick, because I know that there's a technology side in the time I've spent with you in talking. Can you talk a little bit how the current technology is layered in there too with our police department today?
Yeah, technology has been one of the strong driving forces of our agency. Chief Garrison and myself have really have put forth a lot of effort into be ahead of the curve with technology, having those tools in our tool belt in solving crime and keeping our community safe. And over the past 5 years, actually, since Chief Garrison has taken the office of chief, we've put a lot of investment in technology of license plate readers throughout the city, various cameras throughout the city, our real-time intelligence center, where we are basically staying ahead of the curve of criminal activity or criminal elements that are occurring not just in our city but outside our city that could potentially impact our city, which has happened, and we've been in the forefront of that, to where we are able to capture organized crime rings that are occurring out of our jurisdiction and have come into our jurisdiction to commit crimes, and we've actually apprehended them. But it's helped our detectives tremendously with the solvability of cases that we get, where Chief and I talk about, we laugh about this often, that we had this technology when Chief and I were detectives 15, 20 years ago. This would be, we would be amazed. But we had to do it with the old walking door to door, canvassing neighborhoods, knocking on doors and trying to figure out what was that car or where did it look like, the time frame. And today's technology and what we're building here, if there was ever to be, God save us a day, if there was ever to be a crime, a serious crime involving our children, and something was to happen here, we have tools to quickly act and quickly start looking for evidence and identification of people involved to keep our community safe.
So and I'll go to Chief here with this, but there would be something to tell the citizens when it comes to the police department. we don't pay attention to a lot of the crime rates and things as citizens every day living here, but we don't see it either, and we don't see the backside of the criminal elements that are out there that you guys work every day. We're not highlighting them anywhere in the public information system because we don't have our own radio station or TV station kind of at the upper level of what we do. So we don't get highlighted unless there's a massive crime that happens, which we've done that several times with great success. But we've also worked those things out. With the structure that we have today in the current state that it's in, I know we're looking at a building and we're looking futuristically out. Can we maintain what we're doing and keep the standard of operation in the only build the one building on Sumter, or do we really need to take a look at the growth?
We really need to take a look at the broke, a hard look at the broke, because the best operation is an efficient operation. And as we continue to operate in the position that we're at right now, we're not operating at full efficiency that we need to be. And that's what our fear is, that once we become non-effective or less efficient, the criminal element will prey upon that, and they will start to move into the city of Northport and start to commit crimes throughout. So, because of where we're located in the West Coast, we get a lot of transient type criminals, right, that are using the interstates, traveling back and forth. And once those deficiencies are out there and it shows that we're less efficient, those criminals will start to prey more and more on us.
And do you feel like, and I know that Chris has added some of this in already, but with deterring with technology, we do a really good job of doing that now, and which also helps us with, I would believe, manpower and the protection of our manpower with like drones, the drone safety and different things like that we have at our disposal now, so we can keep our patrol officers safe out in the community, safer than we could have back when you guys walked the beat, right? Because of technology.
Absolutely.
But all these things take manpower to operate, and they also take storage of newer equipment that comes into play too. And I don't know that people truly understand all of the inner workings, and I don't mean that in a negative way to the citizens, but I don't know how many of us have actually truly walked through a police building somewhere and understood the full function of what happens inside. So can one of you kind of take that and elaborate on that conversation a little bit?
Yeah, Chris, let me jump in first and then I'll turn it over to you. So when you talk about the technology and how it takes, some additional people to manage that, there's a lot of truth to that. So when the deputy chief and I implemented body cameras, for instance, we were able to manage the body cam system with the personnel and stuff that we have. However, as we continue to grow and we add more cameras and we add more technology out there, we're starting to see that what we had in place as far as manpower managing those things is becoming unmanageable because the workflow is just too great. So yes, we keep enhancing our technology, but there's also that supportive side that needs to keep up with that growth as well.
Deputy Chief, anything to add?
Yeah, just on top of what, like I said, I don't want to get confused too with, we're really good with technology. Does that mean we need less people? No, actually, we need more people and continue with the growth, because, the city is 104 square miles. And when we add all this technology that we've told you that we have throughout the city, we have to, we're creating a electronics, unit that has to specifically now maintain the investments that we've made in keeping our community safe. On top of that, patrol officers in our 104 square miles, we have an average, right now 14 officers let's just say on nights, not during the days, because we have different resources between our traffic or set teams that are out there. But let's use night shift, for instance. There's 14 to 15 officers throughout eight, soon to be 9 zones that the chief has. And what we pay attention to is our data and the heavy call volumes that we see and our response times. Right now, the national average for a priority 1 response call, which those you don't know what priority 1s, those are in progress calls that require emergency response. So throughout our city, the average right now we're hitting is 8 minutes. And that's not, it's a factor of many things, the size of our zones, because our city is so big, the amount of officers we have working, the infrastructure is huge too, of getting from point A to point B throughout the city. To get from where we at now at headquarters to the east side of the city, going emergency mode can take, Chief, 10, 12, 15 minutes easily. With what right now, this traffic, 3 o'clock right now, has anyone gone on Price Boulevard to try to head out towards Toledo Blade?
Try to avoid.
So all of those play factors into our growth, and Chief and I have to look and respond. We need more officers. We have to put more officers out east side and readily available to our peak time hours. So the size of the city, the growth of the city, the infrastructure of the city, all of those pay part of our growth. And then, of course, our team that's in our headquarters, like the chief was talking about, we don't have a lot of space for them. We need more people, but we don't have place to put them. We have to ask for portables in the next coming budget year because we're growing leaps and bounds here. But we're also allowing staff to wear additional hats in their job descriptions because we can't bring in people fast enough. We don't have the room here to put everyone. So that's where the chief says, if we don't get ahead of this, that's where the criminal element is going to start to win, if that makes any sense.
It does. Chief, do you have anything to add in?
No, just kind of caveat on our growth is, so I just spent the last 4 hours with a citizen that wanted kind of an overview of what Northport was about. So I put him in the car and we went on a little tour throughout the city. So 4 hours, and this person was absolutely blown away of all the growth that's going on, how spread out the city is, and how long it takes to get from one side to the other side of the city. And they walked away from here with a totally changed mindset of, yes, we need more because we are growing faster than people can imagine. I think what happens is people get into their daily routine, right? They get up from their house, they drive to work, they go to the grocery store, they go to the after school sports and stuff like that. But sometimes you lose focus of what's going on outside of your perimeter, and that's for the rest of the city. And it was, even for me, I kind of get in that rut too, where I go to events, to the office and this and that. Rarely do I spend an entire day going to all 4 corners of the city. And today was even an eye opener for me, how much stuff is actually going on in this city right now that people are just not aware of.
And we're very blessed here, and we've got a really good police department, really good first responders across the board. We really are strategically, I think strategically laid out better than a lot of cities, even cities around us. I know that Charlotte County has, as far as the fire department goes, they have issues with placement of fire station locations, which cause them a little bit of havoc on response time. And you guys talk about response time. When we don't need you, your response time doesn't mean anything to us.
Correct.
But when we need you, that's when we want that response time, and that's when everybody kind of gets up in arms. But all this management stuff that you're talking about now, and all the futuristic planning of that response time when we do need it, that has to be really taken into consideration today for years down the road, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's in all of that, what we're doing now in planning, like even with the headquarters, John, Chief and I look back is that even some commissioners have come back and even spoke about how we got to where we are today. And everyone talks about this building was built in 2006, right? But when it was built, it was a hurry up. There really wasn't a lot of the staff studies and facility space need studies and the growth like we've done since 2017. We've done 2 independent studies to where we've actually done the planning to say, where is it going to take us in the next 25 years, 35 years, 45 years, right? So we have really done due diligence to put a roadmap out. Adding onto that, pretty much what the fire does, they're really good at strategically placing out how much personnel they're going to need over time. So we had the firm and their experts that do that analysis for us based on all of our data, our calls for service, our unencumbered times, our response times, and the population growth, and the FBI's national average 2 officers per 1,000. All of those were factored in to give us a growth pattern. And that is where the city manager has seen and the commission seen that this is the path we need to follow. Here's the plan. Take us to 2065, give us that shell space. So when Chief and I are probably not even, if we do see it, it'll be very short term, that this is for our successors. This is for the future of this agency now and when we're gone. And we are leaving a roadmap to take our future law enforcement of this city, of this great city, to say, this is what it is. This is where we left you guys. Take it from here. And Chief and I want to be look back and go, man, they did it right, because history is going to look back at these trying moments right now. What is the city going to do and how we're going to do it? And we talk about the past and we're always dogging on the past, right? Well, we don't want that here. We are trying to learn from the past and make good decisions, make strong decisions as taxpayers. Chief and I live in the city of Northport. We have a vested interest, but we know what's right. Our commissioners also know what's right, and they're very supportive. Our city manager is very supportive. They know what is needed, and it's just trying to get that information out there that this is not a want. This is an absolute need that's been talked about for several years.
Chief, you got anything to add?
No, he's spot on. He's spot on with it. I mean, it's these are tough decisions, and I don't bring these ideas forward to the commission lightly. I mean, I understand that when you're talking about increased, taxes or millage or all these things, they're tough decisions, but it's the right thing to do. And I know I can go home at night and put my head on the pillow knowing that I'm doing the right thing for the city of Northport, for the citizens of Northport, for the men and women of the Northport Police Department. And I'm not going to change that. I understand that if people want to disagree about what we need and what we don't need, I get that. And I respect people's opinions. But this is the right thing. There's been independent studies done. This isn't just Chief Todd Garrison and Deputy Chief Chris Morales coming forward saying, hey, we want this pretty new little toy. Let's buy it. It's not what this is about.
So I do have a couple questions that I'll throw in here real quick, and then we'll come back to this, because this is all going to pile on top of each other, I'm sure, by the end of our conversation. But is there a specific department that deals with internet or social media prowling? Within our police department, like the social media prowling, the social media badgering, I guess, or anything like that with social media. Do we have anything with that?
We have detectives that specialize in digital crimes, or whether it's cryptocurrency, internet crimes against children, fraud against that. So that all kind of goes into that same arena. And then we have a digital forensics unit that actually examines hardware into that. So the answer is yes, we do.
So we have people attached to federal task forces that are Northport police detectives that are actually sworn in as federal agents as well. And that's how we're able to go after the child predators and stuff like that online. So yes.
So we are set up very similar to Charlotte County Sheriff's Department in that regard, because I do their care seminar for human trafficking, and they have people who work for the FBI who
Yes,
are part of the system, and that's how we get the total government effect working together. Correct.
correct. That is correct.
So we're different than Sarasota County or Charlotte County because we're the city of Northport, but we kind of have that same working relationship and set our department up the same way. Correct.
That is correct. Yes.
Awesome. So another quick question was about animal control. Is any word on whether that's going to come back our direction, or have you heard anything?
I would say no. We believe that Sheriff Kurt Hoffman is doing a phenomenal job with providing those services to the city of Northport, and we don't see where there would be any type of advantage for Northport to take that back over. Now, this has been a common thing that's been popped up, year after year since I've been the chief here. There are some people that live in the city that, for whatever reason, they want their own animal services. But when you start peeling the onion back and trying to figure out, well, what is the sheriff not providing that Northport would provide? And those things can't be identified. And, the sheriff keeps animal control personnel in the city of Northport. So we are being serviced very well by the sheriff, and his staff is doing a phenomenal job providing those services.
And
I can't even tell you the last time we've had a complaint come in about animal issues or problems. Do you, Chief? I think it's been fairly good.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, just last week, I'm sitting on my little eye and I see a sheriff's office animal control person walking through my backyard trying to get an alligator. I was shocked.
yeah,
I didn't know they got alligators.
I wouldn't have guessed that one either.
I had to ask her, "Are you with the sheriff's office?" And she says, "Yes." I'm like, "I didn't know you guys got alligators." She goes, "Well, we get small ones, and this one's injured, so that's why I'm here to try to get it." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. Thank you for being here."
Yeah, at least they are here doing that. But so let's go into that relationship though with the sheriff's department and Northport PD. Can you talk about how you guys work together and the relationship that you have there?
Oh, I know Chris will echo this. We have a phenomenal relationship with the sheriff and the men and women of the Sarasota Sheriff's Office. We have a seamless integration when it comes to operations and effectiveness. So even last Friday during our vehicle pursuit, that was flawless the way we worked with the sheriff's office, their aviation, some of their special operations personnel, and even the Sarasota Police Department, was part of that. So we have a great working relationship with the sheriff. We have a personal relationship with the sheriff. So yeah, I think things are good. And I'm not just saying that with Northport. I think you'll find every police chief in Sarasota County will echo the same thing that I'm saying, that we have a phenomenal working relationship with our sheriff's office, and we have a phenomenal working relationship with all the law enforcement entities inside Sarasota County.
One of the things too, John, that I can tell you for Sheriff Hoffman, and just like Chief said, we have a very close relationship with Sheriff Hoffman. When he took office, one of the things he did was, criminals don't have boundaries. Unfortunately, in municipalities and counties, we do. So one of the things that the sheriff did, and this is actually taking on more liability, he's probably one of very few sheriffs that does this, is that he deputized a lot of city or police officers, including Chief, myself, all our specialty units, and Venice and Sarasota, to where they have the authority to act if they see something over boundaries, or it takes it into their into their unincorporated to take action. And he's a very strong supporter of that. And I think that helps bring the city's law enforcement communities together and say, your problem's our problem, and let's work together.
So we had another question out there, and I know that this has been all over Facebook too, and it does pertain to the new building in a sense, but would there be an alternative solution? and I'm throwing this out there hypothetically, I'm adding some things in to the question. Would there be an alternative solution for a new building, like having substations in different locations?
So this has come up. We've done a lot of research into it, and it actually will cost a lot more money to do multiple substations throughout the city to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. In the building cost alone, the redundancy that you have to have, the personnel that you have to staff individual buildings. So the concept of having multiple substations throughout the city was abandoned during this process because of the financial impact that it would have on the city. Now, if the city wants to spend a lot more money to do that, then sure, you could have substations throughout the city, but it's not the most efficient way and most economical way to do it. I know that a lot of people move here from other areas and they're familiar with operating in that type of system. I spent 25 years with the sheriff's office where we had 6 different districts offices, right? Plus a headquarters. So I'm used to that type of environment. However, they had the money to staff and fund that. But the county checkbook is a lot different than a municipal city checkbook.
And if I can add on that too, John, Sheriff Hoffman, he came and spoke at one of our commission meetings. He actually talked about how he has taken from substations that they had multiple and has actually brought it back to the main headquarters to where everyone's there at one hub. And he says, it's really something to see how an officer comes in, drops a report off, and then or picks up the report from records. Then he takes it up to the detective and they sit down and meet with the detective. Then the detective goes down to property evidence and takes out the evidence that they need to go there. And then they follow back up. All of those intermoving parts. That's why that Chief talks about that efficiency within the one roof becomes so powerful in the jobs that we do, and instead of having everything all spread out throughout. So is there value of substations? I think when you have large event areas that are constant, and I'll give you an example, and Chief can attest to this, like a substation, if you have a high-end entertainment district where you're always out there and all that, there may be a need to keep certain people out there, but not the concept of spread it out through the entire and have all the redundancy of equipment and vehicles and staffing at all those different areas throughout the entire city. If that makes any sense.
John, it really comes down to cost, and it costs a lot more to do it. And that's why when we were going through this entire process, we were trying to look at cost. Did this give everybody sticker shock? It gave us sticker shock when the price came out. But it just comes down to cost. Some areas, that type of operation works very well, but they can afford it. I don't think right now that we're in a position where we can start building multiple substations throughout and it'll be affordable. Now, I have to remind you, you have to build these stations to be hardened, which costs a lot more money. What people don't realize, and this is this is something that we're having a difficult time with. So during the time of storm activations, what happens is we bring everybody here and they have to sleep here and house here during those storms. This last storm was very, very challenging trying to put the amount of people in this building to sleep them separately from operations. And that's what people don't realize, is that I have to put my people down and let them sleep and get rested before they go back out on the street. So, we work 12-hour A/B shifts. So when A shift's off, then B shift's working, and vice versa. So you have to be able to separate that so people could sleep during the day while the other crew's still out working. And we just have no space left to even house people during those storm activations. So it became very challenging for us.
Well, I love the fact that you went into that, because I don't know how many citizens, because I wasn't aware that we were actually doing that transition at that main building. That I don't think we take that into consideration a lot of times. There were things that I learned this week from you guys, that there are different entities out there that dictate how the building has to be run and how you get in. And all the inner works and all the happenings, and they're not the city of Northport. It's FBI, it's different agencies well above my pay grade that are really dictating a lot of these things that are happening too. Which, when you start really diving in and asking different questions versus I don't want this and I don't want that, and you actually come forward and you try to validate why it's needed, you learn that there's a lot of different moving parts that drive costs up that aren't associated with what you want. It's what you have to do.
Right.
Can you kind of talk about that a little bit too, and how that has to be handled?
Well, I'll let the deputy chief. I know this is one of his strong points on the building construction part of this.
Yeah, the building construction, I don't know if you know this, John, but believe it or not, from 2017 to 2023, construction costs has gone up 48%. So with our building, our construction that we're looking at now, our building model is 122. That is if we were to build in 2026 of a 109,000 square foot facility with 30,000 square foot of shell space to take us into 2065. Now, obviously, with the path of what commission has been pushing, going to 100% design, that now has allowed to the firm and the consultants to say, hey, at the rate we're going and you guys are pushing, if the voters, vote for this in maybe early November, if something comes up for a referendum, you could potentially build and you could save approximately $7 million because we're building sooner, in the construction escalation that they put. Basically, it's 0.5% a month construction cost goes up. That has been consistent. And what's the driving force still of the economy is construction. I just got back from an EDC event in Sarasota yesterday, and construction and housing is what's keeping the economy strong. So the construction costs stay very strong and they continue to rise. So that right there in itself is an eye opener about, man, moving and continuing to moving. Like the city manager says, we cannot pause. We have to continue this journey forward because there is savings for that. The school board, they budgeted the school board, Welland Park. I remember I talked to you this, John. Welland Park's high school, they budgeted $135 million that they budgeted for that high school. It came in at $208 million. It's $175 million for construction, and then all their FF&E fixtures and turnkey, all their equipment is $208 million. They are predicting in the next 5 years, talking with Jody from the school board, who oversees the operations for the school board, that they're predicting in the next 5 years, the next high school to be built in Woodland. They are putting $325 million for the same school to be built within the next 5 years for that school. It's an eye opener. I know Chief said it's a sticker shock. It was to us. And at first glance, there was staff in the city going, there's no way your building costs that much. There's no way. And now everyone's starting to see, wow, it is. City of Tallahassee started theirs in 2019. They're building at $65 million. It's now $145 million. Fort Lauderdale, and same thing with Hollywood. Hollywood was 50 million short because they started and they paused. And the thing that we're hearing from everybody when we're calling them, hey, what did you guys do? What didn't work? And they're like, we paused. We should have kept going. Had we known what we know then, or had we know what we know now, what we know then, we would have saved millions.
Right.
And so we're just trying to learn from others and don't make that mistake, knowing that it's going to cost, John, to put 30,000 shell space into this building now, and really trying to hit home with our citizens, it would only cost $9 million. But our consultant said, hey, if you don't put that 30,000 square shell space in, and let's say in 3 years, you turn around and say, hey, We want that 30,000 added to the police headquarters. It now turned into 32 million. And then add 6% each year onto that if you decide to hold off and wait longer and longer and longer. 15 years, 20 years down the road, 30,000 square feet added onto our building could be upward of 55 to 60 million dollars.
Chief, you got anything to add?
No.
Awesome. So Jeannie has a question, and this is a great question because people wonder. We're talking about building a new police building. What's going to happen to the old one on Sumter?
Well, we've talked a lot about how the police department's growing and we need space and this and that. We're not the only department that is growing and needs space. So the plan is to have neighborhood development services, specifically the building department, purchase the police department, right? And then they would move operations over into the police department, the old police department building, and also provide additional space for people that are in the city hall now. So city hall is starting to bust at its seams too. Those departments that are housed in there are starting to grow to a point where they need space as well. So it will be a good migration from them being able to expand here at the city hall complex to coming over to the old police department building and occupying that space.
And it's really just managing buildings at that point, because as a city we're ever growing.
Right.
I know our public works department, it struggles with building space at times, and we see that but the 104 square miles of space, and I know that I've been here since 2000, and I've really watched several booms at this point, and what we've managed, and I think that if we would have looked at things differently back in 08, it would be different today. With different voting styles, different outlooks. I want to keep it a small town. I don't want it big. Okay, but you're 104 square miles and it's going to get built. I kind of get frustrated, and yet I understand because I love my town, because it is the beauty of this town is it still has the small town feel. It has the connections. If you really want those connections and those interrelationships with you guys or the commissioners, people at City Hall, you can have them, and you can work your way through the systems that way. We have another question that I'm going to kind of feed into one, but can you talk a little bit about the relationship with the Fish and Wildlife, and how they protect what they're doing to protect the wildlife, and then what's the difference between their status and a policeman itself?
So they are sworn law enforcement officers. They have state jurisdiction. They do work closely with our conservation environmental officer that we started 18 months ago, I think now. But you got to remember, the state, they're here, but they're spread very thin. And that's the reason why we started our conservation officer program, was to kind of build the bridge between the two agencies, and also have one of our own people out there addressing some of that stuff every day.
And Chris, you have anything?
Yeah, they work hand in hand with our conservation officers way out east, where it's still undeveloped out there, and they're out there from time to time. And believe it or not, I bumped into the lieutenant from FWC not too long ago. Actually, a gator was at Narramore Park during a soccer event, so they were out there trying to take control of the gator. And one of the things he emphasized on us, again, just to hit home, was the technology that we have in our city. They said since we put up our, the license plate readers out east, and that was one of the combating forces we put out about the need out there to combat the illegal dumping. And he basically said that since we've put that in there out east, the drop in illegal dumping has gone down tremendously. And that is, again, a true testament to the technology and enforcement we put out there, the risk versus reward, right? If the risk outweighs the reward, they're not going to do it. And Chuck Speak, the director, said that he has seen a significant change in the illegal dumping out east, to where they used to go out 4 times a week, at least, sometimes 5, to where he thinks they're going out once every other week now.
Well, so I want to address that for a second, but I want to have to ask this question. Is it that the conservation officer, they follow state laws?
State and local, yes.
State and local, okay.
Yeah.
So the I'm going back to the illegal dumping for a second, because you and we did have a lengthy conversation after our Northport Forward meeting one night, and those are calls that our officers get for illegal dumping, and they're breaking of the law, but that's downtime, as far as I'm concerned, for an officer in their zone, because they're chasing basically trashing trash being dumped, versus, and I hate to call it's a crime, but it's on the scale of criminal activity, it's not anything that I think you would want them to do, but you have to do.
You have to do it. It's a quality of life concern that we address, and it's not just us, John. It's a lot of other different departments. You got code enforcement, you got public works. All those people have to come out and dress. You got to pick it up, you got to weigh it. So, and part of the elements of the crime, whether it's felony or not, is how much of that illegal dumping weight does it constitute a felony. There's a lot of components that go into that, and it's not just the police department. It touches many different facets of the city to handle that one area of illegal dumping that someone chose to dump their garbage out there.
But if we don't do anything about it, right, and we just put blinders to it and walk away, it will just take over itself, so we have to put forth the effort and time to address it.
Well, we've kind of seen that in other cities who have had to I think the answer there is they work from behind. They actually let all the dumping happen, and then they got to clean it up, and they got to implement a system. We've got a system, and it's working, and we just have to keep it to that force where it's being sorry about that.
That's usually me, so no problem.
I was going to say, wow.
Yeah, I got to tell you, both of my boys know that I have a radio show today, and they both knew it. But one of them again decided to call during. How about that? But here's the thing: you got we also have to keep our we kind of have to keep our wits about us with all that you guys do that we don't know you do. That's just one more thing that's added into what our officers do daily. That may not be anything that we as citizens notice, because a lot of that illegal dumping happens on empty streets out in unpopulated areas of Northport, and they're not dumping in the main drags where everybody can see them and turn them in. So that, illegal dumping is one thing, but illegal activity is another. And when you have this many miles to survey and keep an eye on, we've got to be good at what we do, not to have activity happening in some of what I consider these dead zones that are out there with no population, because they're vulnerable for that too, aren't they?
100%. If we're out of sight, out of mind, that's where people will go, and that's normally where criminal acts will occur, and usually bad acts will happen out there. But that out east is where let's, for instance, our zones. We'll talk about zones. Do you know right now a zone from Toledo Blade, at Price, that zone goes all the way out to Charlotte. That's a big zone for one officer. It's a lot. So Chief and I are talking like, hey, we need to, with our growth, we need to split that zone, and we need to start putting officers out exactly what you're saying, John, out east and patrolling out there. But Chief's position is like, hey, listen, and I can't leave one officer out there because you want to talk about the dangers of an officer rolling up on someone or somebody or multiple people. Normally it's multiple people where there's just you and them. And he's like, we have to have at least 2 officers out there at all times. If we're gonna make a dent and make an impact out there, it needs to be 24/7 and at minimum 2 officers in that zone.
And John, one thing when we talk about zones and coverage and stuff, what people don't realize is, all right, we're talking about one zone, but that's a minimum of 6 police officers because we work 12-hour shifts.
8, Chief.
8.
Yeah.
We work 12-hour shifts, and you have both sides. You have to account for vacations and training and stuff like that. So to staff it, it requires all those extra just for one zone.
That'd be
And we
8
have
officers.
6. And we have 6.
How many zones? No, right, zones?
We have 8 zones.
How
Right
many?
now.
8 zones.
We have
8
8.
zones.
Soon to be 9, yeah.
Okay, so in working with all that, so how and I don't know the number to this, but how many people do we have employed through the police department total? Do we know that number?
How many sworn or how many total?
How many total? Roughly.
We have 206. Of the 206, 52 are support staff and 154 are sworn.
All right. So and I know I didn't prep you for any of this, but I know that you guys are all over these things. But with a city our size, is that sufficient?
No.
So
Are we short-handed now?
Yes.
Yes. So what I had presented to, and this was presented to commission, and Chief and I presented this and talked about this, and this is where the consultants who are professionals that have done this, Dean Roberts with LSW for over 40 years came and spoke to the commissions. He took not just one factor, many factors, not just the FBI statistic of 2 cops per 1,000. He took our calls for service, our response times, our unencumbered times, and all that, and put it into his modeling factor of how he came up to where we need to be. So basically right now, in having at 87,000 in population, which we don't have, we should have 162 sworn. They predicted by 2030, we should be at 101,000. This was so they're getting this from the Bieber projections, right? But as you guys know, censuses came out recently. We are 5 years ahead of Bieber's predictions. So in 2030, we were predicted to have 101,000. We would need 216 cops, and we would need 86 support staff for a total addition for a total of 302 with 100,000 population and 95,000 calls for service. We're at 89,000 calls for service. So we are going to well exceed that. Right now, the U.S. Census has put us at, just so you know, 2024 at 94,700 population, the U.S. Census. They're saying by 2025, we will be at 99,517. And in 2026, we'll hit 104.
Yeah, I think we're going to be higher than that in 25.
So, yeah. So we are already behind the curve on that with those projections. So to answer your question, how did we get there? So in 2005, and I had another slide I showed at commission, John, from 2006 to 2015, our agency stayed at 103. I think it was like 2007, actually, from 2006, 2007. We stayed from 103 sworn all the way through till 2015. We showed very little growth of no sworn, but maybe 1 or 2 support staff towards 2015. And that was during the recession. But interesting enough, during the recession of the city where we stayed stagnant and we didn't keep up with the growth, the city increased in population 22,000 residents during that time. So we've always been, now that pushed us before, now we're trying to play that catch up. And that's where the city manager has seen the consultant study and all that, and he sees and he's like, we need to play catch up. We are behind the curve and we need to get to where we need. Now, can't do it all in years. We're going to try to strategically, place that throughout the years. And that's why the consultant gave us, hey, listen, you need to be hiring 12 officers per year up to 2025. Then from 2025 to 2030, you need to be hiring at minimum 15 officers per year and X amount of civilian staff per year to get you where you need to be to keep up with the growth and to get you, with where you need to be at that growth.
And the services that we get as citizens, we're blessed because, like I said, we don't see the crime. If we're out working, I see you guys busy. I see you pulling people over here and there and doing your thing. And we definitely hear the sirens when they go off because the sound here just travels everywhere. But, we don't have the fear factor right now of putting bars on our windows and barbed wire around our streets and our businesses. So there are people on our coast and areas on our coast that do that. And I think the preventative conversation that you're having about more officers needed, looking at growth, looking at cost effectiveness of all of it. Those are huge values. And Chuck wanted an update on this and the EOC side of things. We really didn't even talk about the EOC and what the EOC is. We've got about 4 minutes of airtime left on the radio, and I can stay on a few minutes longer after that on social media. But can you guys talk a little bit about the EOC and where that all is playing into this new police station too?
Well, the EOC is going to be a separate project, and the last commission meeting, the funding was identified by using surtax dollars to fund that, and that project is actually going to be run by the fire department. So Chief Titus and our emergency manager are working on that project right now, but that's going to be built adjacent to Station 81 here at City Hall complex. But that's going to be a separate facility, and right now that project is being run by the fire department.
Okay.
And that's a critical need as well. People are like, well, what do we need the EOC for? It's been working fine in City Hall. It hasn't been, and unless you've been there during these crises to see the type of working environment that people are having to work in, it would just blow you away. So this is a critical time. It is a critical structure that we need. And this isn't Mayberry. And unfortunately, it all comes with a price. And those are the things that we need to be a successful, safe city.
And I love how you keep going back to we don't know what you had to put up with. We know what we had to put up with out here, let alone with what you guys had to do in there, because it was not just being safe in that building, in that environment, and keeping everybody safe and working and out on the road and organized and implementing. But their families were dealing with the same things we were, a lot of them, and you guys too. So, sometimes the first responders, I worked in the hospitals long enough. I worked level 1 trauma. Sometimes you are the forgotten part of what happens when there's something traumatic that happens in a city, or you have to stay extra hours and take care of patients. You guys are there when we need you. You're there when we don't need you. And thank God that's more frequent for me than the other. But the beauty is that we're also looking at planning forward. There's no way that you can't look at this city right now and think it's going to slow down, or hey, we can find little buildings here and there. And I'm not talking about substations. Because the specific structures that you guys are required to have is different than moving over to Winn-Dixie and taking over that building space. You can't do that. It
Right.
doesn't. It's not functionable. And you couldn't get it authorized through all the higher powers that are out there. Is that an accurate? Is that an accurate statement?
Well, for it to be, a hardened facility, you have to have, certain things in place. But, for instance, let's say you went to a Winn-Dixie Plaza. You could run day-to-day operations out of a Winn-Dixie Plaza. When I first started as a deputy sheriff, my first substation was in a strip plaza. However, anytime any type of storm came in, we had to vacate that building and relocate somewhere else. And that's the problem, is we don't have those safe facilities to house your first responders. So what do you do with them? If your first responders aren't there ready to respond to the emergencies, then what happens? You have Armageddon. Right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you have to have a facility hardened and safe for your first responders to get through that storm, so we can immediately respond to those emergencies once that is lifted.
With the new building and how it will be constructed, is that going to change? And I'm setting you up for a beautiful question, by the way. In comparison to Ian, if we had the new building for Ian, would things have gone differently?
I agree. I really do believe so. I'm sure the deputy chief will even agree to this. It was scary being in the building we're in now during Ian. We had a lot of things failing during that storm, so I think things would be a lot different.
Yeah. Well, we actually, it's a blessing in disguise for Ian to happen when it did for us as we were going through this with our growth, because it made us go back into the drawing boards with the architects and learn redundancy, like with our generators, to have redundancy outside. The fueling station. The chief was really pressed hard to have our own fueling station there, because Ian spoke loud and clear of the issues we had with fuel, not having fuel on site. We had a fuel truck outside our headquarters for, God, what was it, 2 weeks, Chief, maybe longer, of people the first few days, our staff couldn't get to work. Our staff couldn't get home. There was no fuel for them to get there. Those are your first responders. And thank God we had that fuel truck there. The bridges were gone. We couldn't get to our public works. There was flooding there. So getting the fueling, having that fueling site there was so critical. And I can tell you, having outside ports outside the building to have mobile trailers, we learned about trailers that came in from the state that have washer and dryers, just a trailer full of washer and dryers. You won't believe how powerful washer and dryers were here at our headquarters for our staff. All of the outside resource teams, Tampa PD, Bradenton, the East Coast, Palm Beach, all these officers that came here were able to wash their clothes and all that and shower. They had portable showers. So we've learned with this new building to have all of these outsourced connectors to when these trailers come in an area that we have a natural disaster, we can put additional logistical equipment there to help support and keep our staff going. One of the big things was washing, food, having a network, for food, our first responders. We learned so much to what it takes to keep people strong and motivated and working through natural disasters to get everyone back on their feet. It was definitely an eye opener, John.
Chief,
and it's in this building.
Yeah, it's just it was an eye opener, and like I said, like the deputy chief said, we're up to 206 people. That's a lot of people to put under one roof. That's not designed for that type of operation. Sleeping and eating and showering and stuff like that. Our police stations aren't designed for that.
And the new one, the new one that we're talking about doing, if you had your best guess, if everything went according to the stars, and I hope the stars align, because I know enough from what I've been involved with you guys on the radio and in conversations having with City Hall in general, and then Public Works, and they're the people that work for our city during Ian proved their worth. They did. They proved their worth. Uh, there were a lot of people that had their homes destroyed or flooded, and they were, gosh, I can't even imagine the stress level that was inside that building, let alone being cramped and trying to figure out how to keep things going. But to come out on this side of it and trying to figure out, what's the best way forward from here. I think that's the moment that people need to really understand that hit the police department and City Hall, is that it wasn't backwards anymore. It was from Ian event forward, to not have that same scenario play out with any of our buildings. And that's
100%.
something as the city I think we have to look at as a whole. Chief, go ahead.
No, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, we all learn from the past. We learn from mistakes, and you try not to repeat those. And I know the deputy chief's put his heart and soul into this project, and all those things have really been looked at and vetted throughout this process, hoping that in the future, it's not a matter of if something like this is going to happen again. It's a matter of when something like that's going to happen, and that the next generation of leadership that's sitting in these seats are going to sit there and say, "Wow, this team really thought this stuff through."
And that's going to affect generations to come.
Yeah.
Really.
There's one thing that John, I want to just stress, that people say, well, what's different about Northport? Because I've been in different areas. The one thing that I will definitely say is that your Northport employees, not just the police department, I'm talking about unilaterally across the board, your Northport employees actually care. And I think that's the big difference with different cities and municipalities and government or county governments, is that the people here actually care. And I've heard that a lot by even our constituents out there, that they've even said, you know what, we've come from other areas, and the one thing that we notice is that you guys actually do care. And that's what puts us out there, I think, above everybody else.
John, one of the things the chief tells when he does he does this do's and don'ts with everybody he hires. Okay. One of the last questions chief tells new hires when they come on is, not just, we work well with other departments and other agencies, but the city's problem is our problem. Their problem's our problem, our problem's their problem. We are all work together. We're all one big family, and we solve things together to make this place a better place to live, laugh, and play.
And that's the way it should be, I think. I grew up in a small community, but our police department was pretty much involved in, gosh, as a kid, it was involved in my daily life, because they knew who we were. They knew you by name. I dare even go into the police officers in the school and that relationship in this conversation, because that's another long conversation I could have with you guys. But I would love to have you both back on again. I think this was very, very informative to the citizens, but I also think that there's more of a deep dive that we could do in talking about the future and where things need to go.
Absolutely. Yep.
So let's see, Jeannie, Northport PD, Northport FE, and city official employees need to be commended for their services and to the community during in. Thanks, Jeannie. I appreciate that. So I appreciate you guys spending your time with us today. And I'm glad that you're going to come back on. No, Chris, you and I were going to be talking about doing some future things and really highlighting the police department and the value that you guys bring. And I look forward to doing that with you.
Thanks for having us, John.
Thanks, John.
You're very welcome. This is John Rawlings with WKDW saying thank you so much for listening in, and join me on Monday. Mayor Alice White will be joining me, and we're going to have an in-depth conversation about the one and only Warren Mill Springs. And I hope we can start to put some nails there and rebuild and beautify and get it started. So look forward to the conversation on Monday. So join us and get the chatter out there and share this video and educate your fellow citizens on our police department. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.